Zapraszam Was na czwartą część finalną wywiadu z Giovannim Santostasim, ekspertem od prawa potęgowego w kontekście Bitcoina. Ten film możecie oglądać w języku polskim, to znaczy napisy można włączyć, trzeba to z poziomu przeglądarki zrobić, nie z poziomu urządzenia mobilnego. Automatyczne tłumaczenie działa dobrze, ale przypomnę też, że jest to któryś z serii film o Bitcoinie. To w zasadzie pewnie będzie 100 któryś tam nasty film o Bitcoinie. Playlistę tych filmów znajdziecie pod spodem. Jest to, zdaje się, 7. film o prawie potęgowym. Nagrywałem filmy w języku polskim. Tą playlistę też Wam przypnę. Więc jeżeli chcecie się dalej edukować, no to wiecie, gdzie klikać. Wszystkie te linki znajdziecie pod spodem. A jeżeli Wam się nie chce dalej oglądać, no to może chociaż na tym etapie jakiś sprawdźcie, czy macie suba, zostawcie lajka, zostawcie komentarz dla zasięgów dla innych. Dobra, dzięki, intro i jedziemy z finalną częścią. Aha, jeszcze dodam, zostawcie jakieś pytanie, jeżeli mielibyście do Giovanniego, ja pewnie z nim jeszcze będę się spotykał, o co chłopa dopytać w tym jego prawie potęgowym.
Look at the overall pattern of a power law, you see how we leave the trend, we reach a peak, we go back to the power law. Imagine I say, which bubble are you talking about? I think Bitcoin went through the red line all this time. I will not be wrong because let's say you don't even care about where the price is, you don't trade, you don't do anything, you care about the long term. It's almost like if a power law, if a Bitcoin went only through the red line, because that is the long-term trajectory. So at the first level, you can say that the power law theory says there are no bubbles. The bubble are a temporary thing, and then the price goes back to the power law. This is why we get 95%, because if a bubble had more importance than then we will not get 95%. The red line will not be a good representation of a general trend.
Yeah,
right?
with a small bubbles, we'll probably have the R square like 99%, right? If there were no bubbles, then this...
Yeah, if we had no bubble at all, then we'll get 99%. But because we get 95%, that means the bubbles are not very important. They are almost like nowhere. And in fact, you can see even visually and intuitively from this. It's like it's the equivalent then if a price continue along the red line. Do you agree with that, right? Because this is the entire result of the bubble is to go back to where it should have been in the first place, right? And it happens over and over and again. So in a sense, the first
for me,
level,
this is actually one of the best slides or the best graphs, because if that line holds for the future, I mean, I don't need to even see the bubbles, right? For me, if I can trust the red line moving forward for the next decades, I mean, that's good enough.
Yeah, that is good enough. But, you know, the entire idea, though, that you can go deeper, that is one of the things that we do with, you know, I have a Discord group where we have almost 700 people joining because we want to go deeper. We want to use some of the other property of Bitcoin because in one level, the bubble don't exist. In the other, they do, right? And you go deeper. And then you say, can I use this knowledge of the bubbles to do things? And one of the things we explore, and not everybody has to do it because different people have different styles, different interests, etc. Some people say, you know what, I still love the power law because it gives me, you know, many times people contact me and say, oh, you know, it gives me a sense of security. It takes out all the worries, all the stress, because I understand it's going to grow along this direction. It's almost unavoidable that we are going to reach $1 million. You know, it's going to happen in 10 years, but I don't care. I can wait 10 years for $1 million Bitcoin. I'll get a lot of that. So it's also helping the people that want just to hodl. You know, it's not that people that don't hodl. Only people, you know, the only people that resist this are the people that hodl and they wait for the God candle. All these very crazy things that are not going to happen, and they're also bad for Bitcoin if they happen. So, the people that appreciate, even hodler, they do appreciate this thing. And then, there are some people like me that they say, wait a second, the bubble are there, are still part of Bitcoin. Why don't I use that? Because I would like to multiply my Bitcoin. So it's not crazy that if you think these bubbles will continue to repeat themselves in this very precise pattern, to do things like, maybe selling some of your Bitcoin at the top. I don't say everything, but that will be a bad thing to do. But what about selling 10%? What about selling 20%? You take a little risk and you are betting on the idea that these patterns will continue. Because if you do that, then when you sell at the top and rebuy at the bottom, and this understanding through the power law allows us to understand this cycle in a very precise way, then we can multiply our Bitcoin. Like, to give you an example, if you just hodl and you double the time of existence of Bitcoins, right? It has existed for 15 years. You double, so you go in the future by 15 years. If you take 2 to the power of 6, 64. You get 65. Yeah, 64. So basically, we are going to have 64 times our return. So, for example, if Bitcoin right now, it's about 60,000 times, $60,000, we will get something close to 3 million something, right?
Yeah.
We're going to get almost $4 million Bitcoin.
And I think we probably should explain like why 2 to the power of 6, right? Because price is proportional to the time to the 6, right? So that's like when you double the time.
So if you double the time, then you get 2 to the 6. If you triple, 3 to the 6. It is, I think, 720, something like that. So if you wait 30 years, then you're going to get 720. You see, it's non-linear, right? So it goes up very fast as you go 2 times, 3 times, etc. Because you get this crazy 6, and it becomes very non-linear in that way. But if you do this little game of selling at the top and buying at the bottom, now this is an idealized case, right? Nobody's going to get the idealized case, but maybe a percentage of that, right? You get 1,200. So you go from 65 to 1,000, so in the next 15 years. So it's really different, right? So I'm going to do it. I'm going to take some of my gains when we reach the top, sell some of my Bitcoin, or do other things. Like, for example, you can get some put options against ETFs, or maybe against MicroStrategy. So you can use this knowledge of a power law to actually do more active things as an investor, more aggressive, without doing anything crazy and degen. I will not sell all my Bitcoin. I will not do anything stupid like that. Just do something that, make a plan based on your risk aversion or risk tolerance, and say, I think I can do 10%. You know what? I can try to do this.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, I wanted to clarify, this is not a financial advice. I mean, people are
not
having different
advice, but,
like profiles.
Yeah.
Some are like a
we are thinking, right? We are thinking, we are exploring, we are sharing some ideas with people. It's not financial advice, but everybody should do their own studies. They should look at these and see if this makes sense to you.
So basically, you're saying you've averaged those 3 cycles. So basing on this, we are like several months before the kind of trend.
So basically, usually what happens, the beginning of a bull market starts in December, because actually one of the things we did, we transformed these months, like in a clock. So the beginning of a clock is 0, that is the top. If you go 1 year away, that is 3 hours. And usually 3, you see where 3 is, it's the bottom. You see how it looks like the bottom of a cycle. And then, as I told you, there is 2 years. That will go from 3 o'clock all the way to 9. So 9 is when the bull market starts in this clock. And that is about December of this year. So if you apply to this particular cycle, it will be December. And maybe, it can happen a little bit early, maybe instead of happening at 9, it's going to happen 8:30. So close to that time. And that time is here, because you see how this is like a wrapping around, right? So you go from 9, you go back to -3, but it will be 9, right? -3, the same thing when 9. It's like a cycle, right? It goes around. You see how this works?
Yeah, yeah. I'm just my question is because I've seen this Bitcoin clock in your presentation before, and you use this like a 2 minutes. I mean,
Yeah,
every
two
minute is
minutes.
2 days, right? Or 3 hours.
1 minute of a clock is 2 days of human time.
So the like a full round is.
Yeah, I have it even here, right? So this is the clock.
Any particular like idea behind it, like or it's just like your way of expressing this Bitcoin?
It's another way. So in science, we have many different ways of
Okay.
representing the data. So this called polar coordinates. Like
Okay.
if you have a phenomena that is periodic, like Bitcoin, you see Bitcoin has these cycles that are happening every 4 years. It's something not new. By the way, I want to give credit to this other analyst. Is called the rational root. He was the first one that came up with this idea. My innovation is to add, first of all, basically explain why we see this nice pattern that he showed is because Bitcoin is a power law. And if you put a power law into this type of coordinate, you get what is called a power law spiral. There is such a thing that is called a power law spiral. And by the way, there is a paper that shows how tooth, turns, horns, many different shells, many different natural shapes are power law spirals. They follow a power law in a circle like that, exactly like Bitcoin, because that is another way of looking at Bitcoin. It is a power law spiral. And it's like all these different phenomena, they grow in this way. It is amazing, that actually all these natural forms are power law spiral. So you can show Bitcoin in this other aspect. And people do it with, for example, temperature. Let's say, imagine I want to show the temperature of Warsaw. And I do a graph where I put the temperature in a circle. The temperature will be the radius, and the time, like in a clock, right? The time will be the angle. So in that case, for example, it will be 1 year because you decide how big is the the entire cycle, right? When you do the equations, in this case, we are using 4 years because that is the natural period of this system. In the case of a temperature, the natural period will be 1 year, right? Because of the seasons. So imagine I represent the temperature in this circle, and every quarter will represent basically 4 months, right? It will be a season. And so you will look at the temperature changing because it's the radius of a circle. And it will look like some kind of heart shape because, if this is summer, the temperature will be higher. During winter, will be slower. But then, let's say something happened, maybe there is global warming or something that changes over the years the temperature, then I will see like a spiral, will start to look like a spiral because the temperature becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. In this case, it's the same thing. Instead of if a price of Bitcoin, like if you do it with gold, gold went a little bit higher now, but has been very constant over the years. It will look more like a circle. But with Bitcoin, because it grows so fast, it looks like a spiral, and it goes because the radius is the price here. It goes higher and higher and higher. Bigger the spiral, bigger the price. And it's a way of showing the regularities of the clock because you see how all the different tops are all aligned here, in like around 12. You see these are all the tops. So we had a top in around January, a little bit before, but January 2014, 2018, 22, basically the end of the year. They are always happen at the end of the year of it, every 4 years.
Do you think there is
separated by 4
anything in
years.
like in the power law theory that can explain it, or is it basically more like a seasonal thing because I mean
I think are
Christmas?
two different phenomena. And many times you have things like that in science where you have two different signals that are working together. So there is the overall general trend, and then there is some other phenomena that works with the general trend that adds this
Okay.
seasonality, this periodicity. So there are two different signals. I don't think it has anything to do with the power law itself. Now, you can express it in that way because I go in the rabbit hole almost every day, So I wrote some equations that describe the behavior of Bitcoin like if it was a network. These are differential equations. And I express everything in terms of connections, nodes. And if I show that the strength of the connections changes with time, then I can reproduce the bubbles. But even there, I will need some kind of external phenomena that creates the oscillations, that creates the periodicity. So there is something else, that it's obvious what it could be that, and we have even a video about that. It's the halving cycle. It's the fact that we do halving, and the halving is happening every 4 years, and that causes certain things to happen. What happened? My theory says it has nothing to do with a direct influence of cutting the supply, cutting the production. That I can show mathematically it has nothing to do. It's wrong. In the beginning, I was not against it. I explored it. I look at the data, and now I have the data tells me it's not. So, because many people are still thinking about S2F, right? Like a contending model. No, S2F actually, it's based on a mathematical error. It's actually based on a rookie mistake that a real scientist can spot within a few minutes when one look at how S2F is built. So I'm very strong against S2F. I never do that with other models, etc. But with S2F, it's really wrong.
Yeah, I was not like never big fan of S2F, but and I think halvings they obviously play their role as kind of the cult, but I'm kind of I'm still stick to the fact that I mean to the theory that the scarcity of Bitcoin, this 21 million or whatever the number is, but the fact that it's scarce.
Yeah, I mean that gives a value. That gives you the general value of Bitcoin because it makes it non-dilutable. So when you describe why Bitcoin is important, of course you need to introduce that. And many people misunderstand me because they think that I'm attacking the fact that there is a fixed cap. No, I'm not saying anything against that. That is a great property. Now, a physicist will look at that and will think it's something that has to do with conservation. And in physics, we have a lot of conservation principles, like, for example, conservation of energy, conservation of momentum. These are almost very fundamental ideas that actually are very important to understand if you want to understand the physical world. And I think the 21 million, it's basically like that, almost like conservation of energy. So one day, I do want to find a way of incorporating that idea and make it part of a theory. But right now, anything I tried, it doesn't work. Like, for example, I cannot explain the power law growth using that. The only thing that I was able to use it is to show that given that we have a fixed amount of coins, as more people join the network, there is better distribution. It becomes more fair in a certain sense. And that is actually something that is useful because there are a lot of people that criticize Bitcoin, maybe more from the left, because we want everybody, right? We want people from the right, we want people from the left, we want everybody. Bitcoin should be from everybody. Many people from the left make arguments about, it's a very concentrated in few hands, people, from few hands. It's not a very fair system. There are like the equivalent of, the 1% in the world that you guys want to create another system, but it has the same problems. No, actually, you can show that the fact that we have 21 million, it distributes the wealth. And it does it in a way where it's not like communism where somebody comes with a gun and say, hey, you have to give some money away. It's just part of a natural system of how the system works. That if you want more people joining in, somebody has to give some of their Bitcoin away, right? But you do it willingly, you do it naturally, nobody's forcing you. It's just how the system works. So it's actually, it has kind of a best characteristic both of a capitalist work in world, because you have to work harder for getting your Bitcoin, you have to be a participant, you have to, you cannot just stay there do nothing. It has both good characteristics, but also the fact that there is a cap, it creates a redistribution, a natural redistribution. So if you measure, like, there is this called the Gini coefficient, they measure how fair an economical system is. The Gini coefficient is growing. That is good, because it means it's fairer. It's a better, everybody gets their share of Bitcoins. And more people get in, more distributed it is. Also, it's kind of another way of thinking about decentralization. So it becomes more decentralized, more and more people are joining it. And that is a consequence of a fixed cap. I cannot include it in anything else so far. Maybe I didn't think about it. I think I have a couple of ideas, but what I'm saying, like, for example, if you look at the reduction of a production, and we could go there, but maybe we can do it in other episodes where we talk about that, because it's a little bit deeper. But I can show mathematically that one of the reasons is also, you can look at this graph here. So if you think that the impact of mining can change the price, look at this graph. This graph shows the transaction volume. So, this is the price, the blue line. The red line is how many millions of Bitcoins are traded every day. You can see that it's kind of flat, right? It has been flat for a long time. So it's kind of consistent how many millions of Bitcoins are traded every day. And the light blue curve is how many Bitcoins are produced. And you can see it goes down. Look how small that number is, like thousands of times smaller than the transaction volume. So it's like saying, you have this huge big river that is the transaction volume, and then there is this little rivulet that brings in a little bit more coins, and that rivulet is drying up, and somebody comes in and say, that rivulet going down is going to influence the price of Bitcoin. You will laugh, right? Or will influence the, how big the flow of a big river is. It's going to influence nothing because it's thousands of times smaller. So it cannot really impact something that is thousands of times bigger. It doesn't make a difference. In particular, as it goes down, right? It becomes less and less important. So what is important is how many Bitcoins are transacted and how many people participate, because that is the main thing. Because, see, one of the discoveries, and maybe because we are talking about the cycles, but we can go back to the cycle in a moment. Let me switch a little bit because we are talking about what influences the price. So what the theory discover, because I want to tell you two things. The first thing is this. When you discover that Bitcoin is a power law, when you put it in this big context of all the different power laws in the world, right? There are power laws in the planets, how the planets organize. So if you look at the distance of the planets from the sun and how long it takes for the planets to go around the sun, it's a power law. And the exponent, the slope of this line, remember there is that little exponent. The exponent is almost like a fingerprint. It's a fingerprint of that phenomenon. All these are, so in physics, we look at both what is similar and what is different. What is similar is that the equation that describe all these different phenomena has the same form. Is y equal x to some n. But n is different for different phenomena. And the difference in the different phenomena is what characterizes that phenomena. it gives like almost like a fingerprint. It gives like a very specific characteristic. So for Kepler's law, that is this law that you're saying, it is pretty amazing. You see how all the planets follow this line, right? It's incredible. You will think that there is not a pattern. There is a very precise pattern. And this slope is 2/3. When you look at something like we were talking about before, how much energy an animal consumes relatively to its size. And if you go through huge, big variation from the little mouse all the way to the elephant, that is almost 100,000 times bigger than the mouse, there is all this regularity. And also this is a power law, because notice, you see, we know that it's a power law, even if they don't say log, because you see how they emphasize the scale 0.1, 1, 10. That is a clue that we are doing a power law. And so we are focusing on the scale. So if you focus on the scale, you see this beautiful power law. Notice also that as you go from the planet, where it's almost perfect, it's not really clear because we put these huge big dots, but if you drew like a small little dot, it's almost like perfect. It's like almost shocking how perfect it is, because you're dealing with a phenomenon, like a physics. But if you go to something like biology, you still see the pattern, but it's a little bit more fuzzy. You see how the dots don't follow. So the R square here will be 0.99999, many nines. And this will be, 0. I don't know, probably 8.5, 8.6. It's not even as good as Bitcoin. But still pretty good, But there is fuzziness. The dots that don't all fall on top of a black line, there is some variation because we are talking about something more complex, physiology, but still amazing that there is a general pattern, right?
Yeah.
And the slope here is 3/4. And see, and then we can talk about length, because then many people say, well, okay, it works for planets, it works for biology, but it doesn't work with human beings. It does work with human beings. Language, for example, is a human phenomena, right? We created it, and they follow a power law. Like in this case, it's basically you're looking how frequent a word happens, like a V, for example. You can imagine that we use V many times in the language. And that is very, in fact, I think in English is the most used word. Then you rank, imagine, say, okay, I'm going to take V is going number first, B is the number second, whatever. And then I rank them in terms of how many times this word comes, and I organize them in that way. And then how many times that word is repeated, and I get this graph, log graph. It's called the Zipf's law. And notice how doesn't matter which language you are using, they all follow kind of the same pattern. That is amazing.
It's that's pretty amazing,
right? The Chinese and ancient Greek and ancient Egyptian, Latin, all Polish language, all of them follow the same pattern. It's crazy. And then the same thing with cities. You can do the same thing. You can organize them in terms of size. You can rank them, and then they follow, different size cities. Maybe, these are different regions inside the nation, different nations. They all follow power laws. And there are many, many other phenomena. So they put Bitcoin inside this big context of this natural phenomena, this social phenomena, and makes it very unique, And also, what we learn from this, that the slope is very important because it's kind of a fingerprint. And if you, for example, people wrote hundreds of papers in trying to understand why we have 3/4. Or Newton created these laws of gravity, or, one of the things that he uses to show that actually is real is to show when he did it, it took almost 100 years for Newton to explain why we had this 2/3. But that was one of his goals, one of the ways that he convinced other scientists that he was right, that he was able to explain Kepler's law using the law of gravity. And so it's very important to explore that exponent. And so I spent a lot of time thinking where this 6 comes from. Where does it come from? Is there a way to explain that 6? Because if I can explain that 6, I basically did both what Kepler's did, that was discover the law, but also what Newton did, that was explaining the law, where the law comes from. And so if you read the book Scale, by the way, we have an entire chapter explaining where the 3/4 from. It's a very fascinating story. You can look it up. But I did the same thing. By the way, this slide shows many different laws in nature, particular physical laws, where there are all these different exponents. You see 1, 3, 5, 4, many different phenomena in nature. We follow power law, and we have different exponents. So this is a book scale. So what I discovered, I kind of went back to my origin story. Do you remember when I told you I discovered price and addresses, transactions and addresses, hash rate and price, and they were all power laws. But then when I will go to time, and I was trying to describe how price changing in time, I will use an S curve or other things that didn't make sense. So I went back and I say, wait a second, let me plot everything together. Let me plot all these things as power law, see if they are power laws, and how they are connected with each other. And now I can explain where that 6 come from, because where does it come from? Well, adoption, and please, everybody listen to this thing. If anybody says Bitcoin follow an S-curve, it doesn't. In fact, in a few days, I'm going to have a meeting. I don't know if I can say, but hopefully I don't say anything wrong, but I'm meeting with Fidelity people, and they're going to explain to them, because finally was able to convince them, it doesn't fall on a skirt, because they are saying that. We even had a video where they repeat this thing, and I'm going to show the data and say, guys, look at this, let's try to have a uniform message to other Bitcoiners or possible new Bitcoiners, where we give them the same message based on reality. The reality is, look at this address. It's not perfect, but you see a straight line there in the, this where addresses versus time. You see, it's almost, actually looks almost better than the power law in time, with price, right? There is a little bit deviation in the beginning. Maybe in fact, in the beginning, the system needs to kind of adapt to be a power law. It takes time, then it's almost perfect. Look at this here. Almost perfect on top of that line. Then there was a bubble, it deviated, it continued to move. Now it's a little bit lower. This is data from several months ago. I need to look at how the data looks now. But it's a pretty good damn power law with very, very high R square. I think in fact, actually, it's higher than 95, maybe 97 or something like that. And the slope, it's a number close to 3. And then when you do the price versus addresses, this is actually one of the first power law that I found in 2013. Again, you get a power law. There are the bubbles that are a little bit stronger. That means probably during the bubble, we don't do the Metcalfe law. We do something else. People go crazy. They FOMO, they overvalue Bitcoin. You see, notice how they are above the line. That means basically they are overvaluing relatively to Metcalfe. Metcalfe say it should be proportional to the square or close to the square, and people go crazy and have higher prices. And then it comes back, because it comes back to reality, right? So, and there are times where it's undervalued, relatively to the Metcalfe law, but in general, it follows a power law. And that slope, it's close to 2. It's not perfectly close, but okay. Then the idea is, it goes like this. The price equal to the addresses square, to make it simple, but the addresses are going with the cube. So when you have cube to the square, you multiply the exponents. And I did it here with the exact number, even not the simplification. I took 3.17, I multiply by 1.77, and I get 5.71. And the real one is 5.65. So we are within 1% when you combine the two. So basically, I found the reason why we see this beautiful power law in time, because it's the combination of how the addresses grow, that is basically how adoption grows, and how the growth of the number of Bitcoin or the participants of the activity in the network affects the price. That is basically this Metcalfe law. So these are all network properties. So it tells us that Bitcoin doesn't behave like a normal asset, it behaves like a network. And then also hash rate, for example, is related to price. So hash rate equal price square. And then you can look for hash rate versus, in time. In time, if the price goes up with 6, the hash rate goes up with 12. That is unbelievable. This is why we see hash rate growing crazy, going higher and higher and higher. And again, I don't see ever anybody mentioning this, that hash rate is a power law, because that allows us to predict where the hash rate will be in 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Crazy values. And same thing, you can look at hash rate versus addresses, again, power law between the two. So there are basically 6 power laws.
Yeah,
And you
actually,
can
I
put
was
them
sharing on my channel many times the hash rates actually. I was actually telling it behaves like exponentially, so I was wrong. But it's good that you described it like in this natural way. Well, really, as I understand it, as the adoption grows, the number of addresses grow, and this grows in time. So this goes proportional to the time to the third.
Yeah,
Then
so
we
I
see.
found that is a beautiful diagram that is trying to explain the loop, because remember I
Yeah, okay.
say Bitcoin is a loop,
Yeah, it's a
and
great
here is the
diagram.
loop. That is a fantastic, beautiful loop, because things that go in loop are stable, are strong, they are difficult to change, both in a negative and positive direction. Because when people complain about the power law being too predictable, etc., because they like something wild, well, you want it wild up, like wanted a girlfriend being all the time happy and playful, and she wants sex, etc. But that same crazy girlfriend, believe me, I had girlfriends like that, also goes crazy and wants to break up with you, and tells you that it doesn't like you
Yeah.
anymore, etc. So she can do also that, and so Bitcoin can also go to zero. If it is wild, it can go wild in both directions. So I rather have something steady and predictable, and I know where it's going, than having something wild. And loops generate things that are stable over time, and it's one of the mechanisms that protects the system. And here is the loop we were discussing before. So basically, you have, I didn't make this, somebody else made, and it was incredible, because say, yeah, now we have a mathematical evidence that actually it does that, right? So there is the demand of story of value. Imagine Satoshi, right? Like I said before, some people come and join him and say, okay, this is kind of a cool idea. In the beginning, there was no money. It was all energy, time, their intellect, that they contribute and made the price go up, the value go up, even with enough data at that time, because it was basically almost zero, and that pushed the price up, right? And pushing the price up, what it does, and it goes up, we know how it goes up. It goes up with a power law, right? The price reacts to this adoption that grows like a power law. It reacts with the Metcalfe law, and so it produces a power law in time with the power of 6. When you combine, here I'm simplifying, 3 and 2, you combine them together, you multiply the exponents, you get 6, right? Beautiful. And so the Bitcoin price rises, right? When it rises, what it does, it attracts miners. So miners want to say, whoa, we can make money. Let's invest in this thing. Let's buy the miners. So let's invest in the infrastructure. Now, I added to this loop, that is another loop, where basically is the difficulty adjustment. That is also important. It works almost like a thermostat, and it regulates the system. So it's another regulation in the system that creates, when you add more and more loop in this type of system, you get even more power laws. You get even more precise power laws. And so the difficulty adjustment grows because more miners are coming in. And I was able to explain, if you read my article, why we see this relationship between hash rate and power by the difficulty adjustment. If you read it, I was able to show that this is what you will expect. You will expect there is a relationship between price and hash rate with the square. It's due to the difficulty adjustment.
Yeah, yeah.
And that,
I've seen the importance for people watching. I think all these articles you can find on Big Poseidon, right? It's like your place where
yeah,
you plug all the Medium posts.
all my
Others.
articles.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
articles.
made a logical argument, and even did a simulation where I was showing that if you have something like the difficulty adjustment, you will expect this relationship between price. I made a simulation. I made a lot of simulation. I can create basically a fake Bitcoin in my computer and say, okay, if you ask these characteristics and it grows in this way, then show me the price. I can add some noise. And I see exactly this. I create all these power laws. In fact, I can show you here, I have a simulation. This is my simulation. I made a simulation here on the left, the simulation, where it's all synthetic and it follows the same laws. And then you see here on the right, the real data. Look how similar they are. I even can reproduce the bubbles, through the simulation, all through math.
Yeah, so difficulty adjustment is clearly one of the curbing mechanisms, right? It's one of the brakes.
It's one of the curbing mechanism, exactly. It's one of the control mechanisms. You can call it an inhibitory process. In many organisms, like the brain, for example, has a lot of inhibitory processes. Like if you get too excited about something, it wants to bring you back. If you want to eat, you eat, and then you feel satisfied. That is a curbing mechanism, because otherwise you can poison yourself. You continue to eat, etc. Right? It would not be good. But in physiology and in the world, there are a lot of mechanisms like that. Think about a car. A car will be completely useless if it didn't have brakes. Right? You want to have an accelerator, but you also imagine a car that only accelerates. You will crash, right? Yeah. Sooner or later, you will crash. You need also the brakes. And so the genius of Satoshi was to create this brake, and it's amazing that it's a curbing mechanism. And
do you think, Giovanni, sorry to interrupt, do you think that Satoshi was aware of the power laws? And that's...
I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know if he even knew about power laws, but for sure, he was an engineer and he knew the importance of having curbing mechanism, because, all kinds of engineering systems are also called control system, and they need to have it. Like, if you have an airplane, you need to have ways to control the airplane. And so you're going to have ways of, if you go too much up, to go down, you want to control it. That, if you go left, you want to also go right. And it has all these ways of controlling the behavior. And this is a way of controlling the behavior. So you built an engineering system, and he realized I need to have some kind of curbing mechanism. And so at least indirectly, I know that he was thinking that he will behave in a very non-linear fashion, because every time you introduce this control system, you start to have a very non-linear behavior. And non-linear behavior leads to things like scale invariance and power laws and all kinds of things like that. So I'm not sure that he expected a power law growth, but I'm sure that he was thinking about complexity and, inhibitory processes. He was very aware of all these concepts, but the fact that eventually it will show up as a power law, I'm not sure. It's possibly not, but it doesn't matter, right? It's amazing that the system did that by itself. And if we continue in the loop, right, then people invest more because say, okay, right, we can buy more machines and etc. So basically the system grows also, because it's not just people, it's also all these machines, all this investment, all this infrastructure that is built. Is the relationship between the two that is important. And then this brings more security, because it's more difficult if you have more higher hash rate. It's more difficult to do the 51% attack and other type of attacks. And, the average investor maybe doesn't care directly about that, because, he's not saying, oh, look, the hash rate is growing, or the security of the system is growing. Maybe some sophisticated investor do that, but you know what? The institution, the bank, the big investor, they look at things like that, because they are not going to invest hundreds of millions if they didn't know that it's a secure system. They have analysts that analyze that and tell them, so, because there is this problem, can be attacked, can we lose all our monies, can Bitcoin be hacked. They, indirectly or directly, they are aware of that, and this brings more security to the system, that that makes the system more valuable in terms of store of value, right? Say, okay, this is a very good store of value. I can put my money in it because there is all this energy associated with it. There is it's a very secure system. It's very difficult to hack, and the cycle repeats, and it's a continuous cycle. Instead of being a vicious cycle, it's a virtuous cycle, right? Yeah. It's a virtuous cycle, and it's beautiful. These are the deep things that the power law gives you, and no other understanding of Bitcoin gives you. This is why it's much more than just a model. When people say, oh, it's just a model. No, it's not just a model. It's an entire philosophy. It's an entire theory of how Bitcoin works, what are the causes, how to grow. Now, is it a complete theory in the sense that there is nothing else to explain? Of course not. This is how, when we do theories, in science is just a starting point. You know, we arrive to a very good understanding of a phenomena, but then we can explore more. But it gives us a framework, right? Because now you have a language, you have a concepts, you have equation, and that allows you to go deeper. And this is what I want. I want more people, more scientists, but even common people, because our days with chat GPT, you can be like a little scientist. You can interact, you can ask questions. And I see more and more people doing that, you know, like even people that are not scientists, they reproduce. I invite everybody to interact with ChatGPT and say, look, these are, you can give it data and you can download the data from online. There are different places, or even show it a graph, show it a graph of the price. And they say, hey, can you fit it with a power law? It can do that. And so everybody actually should do that. You know, you should play, because in Bitcoin, as in science, because that is the advantage of science, we never want, if you hear a scientist tell you, hey, trust me, bro, he's not a scientist. A scientist always tell you, hey, if you want, you can verify, you can do it yourself, right? It's all about do not trust, verify. Science is like that. This is why Bitcoin belongs to science, because it's the same thing. We want to verify and not trust anybody. But, you know, this gives you a lot of ideas. Maybe I want to show you two things. One in this line, and then we can go very quickly to the cycles and how we can predict the cycle. Maybe we can stop there. But I did this diagram that shows this also in another fashion. Let me show you this one. So I did this one. So basically, this in one single slide represents all these things that we discussed. So basically, it's and sometimes I'm surprised by how people react to things. Like I'm thinking I'm doing something good, and then there is always somebody coming up with. That is okay, because you know you can address a misconception. We even have a video where we address all these misconceptions and fallacies. So when I showed this thing, I thought, oh, many people will be excited because it looks interesting, right? You created this almost like a chain reaction, but it's a controlled chain reaction. And I will tell you in a moment why it's controlled. And then some people started to say, oh, it's like a Ponzi scheme. It's not a Ponzi scheme, because people are willing participants. They study Bitcoin and they interact. It's a network. You are creating a network. More and more people connect. It's a social movement. So it's not a Ponzi scheme. Ponzi scheme are exponential. They don't never become power laws. Power laws are virtuous things. Yeah. I think that the fact that we are following a power law shows there is something good here. Now, what is the difference? So this is what I was trying to explain before, right? So basically, it turns out because of that tree, and by the way, it turns out that I found a lot of literature that usually viruses are exponential, but when there is a curbing mechanism, like for example, we were mentioning AIDS, and the curbing mechanism in AIDS is the fact that, you know, people started to hear it on the TV, on the media, that there was this illness. So they started to take precautions. You know, they started to reduce the number of partners that they had. They started to take different measures, you know, to prevent infections, etc. And so that slowed down the virus, and it went from being an exponential to a power law. Mm-hmm. So it became a power law. And in fact, the power law was a power law in time with the cube, exactly like a Bitcoin.
Okay.
So now you're thinking, yeah, it's not good that we are like AIDS, but it's a virus of the mind, right? It's a virus that is spreading, and is spreading this information, and is slowing down because it takes time to absorb it, and it takes time for the infrastructure, etc. And it's a good thing. Now I show you how this curbing happens, because basically, because of that tree of a exponent, it means from a practical level that every time, so you can do it in fact on a daily basis. And by the way, this is a simplification, right? Because somebody could say, take it literally, say, well, I'm not sure that Satoshi really involved only 3 people, maybe it was 4, or maybe it was 2. I always surprised by things like that, and I don't know why people have these hang-ups. It's an average, you know, we are talking about the average behavior, and it's an idealization, right? But explain what is happening. So the first day there was only Satoshi, you know, and I put it here like a polar star. He's the polar star of our world, you know. And then Satoshi involved 3 people. So he was orange peeling the first 3 days, 3 people, because it works in this way. It's basically, I wrote it here, the change of Bitcoiners, if we are thinking about addresses as a proxy for Bitcoiners, the change in Bitcoiners is equal to 3 over time. So the time that Bitcoin has existed. This is how it works. You can write an equation to describe adoption. How easy it could be, right? The change in the number of Bitcoin per day is equal to 3 divided by the number of days where Bitcoin has existed. And so the first day, we had 3 divided 1, so 3, right? 3 Bitcoiners. So Satoshi brought in 3 Bitcoiners, directly or indirectly. Now, these 3 Bitcoiners started to orange peel more people. So the second day, it works in this way. We have 3 days divided by 2, 3, right? The multiplying factor, divided by 2, that is the number of days that Bitcoin has existed. This is day number 2. Multiply by, this is the other important factor. So is the change in Bitcoiner multiply by 3, so equal 3, divided the number of days, multiply by the number of Bitcoin. You see, this is what makes this an iteration. This is why everything that happened to Bitcoin depends where Bitcoin is, right? The number of Bitcoiners where there are involved. And so this is why everything is proportional, because it happens all the time based on how many of us there are, right? And it could be institutions, it could be different things. So a process like that is called an iteration. It's iterated because you take the output and the output becomes the input, and you go on and on like that in a loop. So the second day we had, 3, that is this multiply factor. Now, why is 3, where that 3 comes from? We will have to study and find out, but it's 3 from observation. You divide by 2, that is the number of days, and you multiply by how many Bitcoiners there are. How many Bitcoiners there are? There is Satoshi and his 3 friends, right? So 4. Yeah. So you see how simple it is. The 3 divided by 2, multiply by 4 gives 6. So we had the second day, the third day, sorry, we have 6 people, right? Because the change, it's 10 people, because it's the change, this tell us the change, 6. We orange peel 6 more people. We add to the existing 4, so we add 10 people. And so when you go to the next day, right, third day, you have 3 divided by 3, multiply by 10, 10. So that is the change. So we add 10 more people. So we had already 6 from the previous day. Now we have a total of 16. And you can go on and on like this. Notice that dividing by t, time, it's our curbing mechanism. That is what is curbing. Because if it was exponential, we will not have that. We will have 3, and then we will have 3 times 4, so 12. You will not have that curbing mechanism. That is the difference between an exponential and a power law. The exponential, we will have whatever number of Bitcoin, you multiply by 3, then whatever that is, you multiply by 3, then whatever that is, you multiply by 3. So you will always multiply whatever you have by 3, and that will give rise to an exponential. Because we are dividing by the number of days, that is the curbing mechanism. And you go from being an exponential to a power law. You see how it works?
Yeah, exactly.
It's really interesting, right?
Exactly. And I do encourage people like to play with this formulas. Actually, I'm looking on your other formula for the price as relates to time. I've tried to calculate it like where we are today versus this. So 10 to the power of minus 17. I think we are, So I think it's interesting to understand.
So these mechanism explains this one, why we see this power law. In fact, if you put it in a computer, if you are a programmer and you can write a for loop, or you can even ask ChatGPT, say, ChatGPT, I have this, you can explain it. You can explain it in Word. Even can copy and paste this and give it to ChatGPT and then say, can you write me an equation that describes this? He will show you a power law. He will show you a power law, because this is how you get rise to a power law. Exactly this power law. You can derive a power law from this process that I just explained. And you can explain it to ChatGPT. In fact, if you're interested, why don't you do it and see it, because it will be really cool. You'll learn a lot of things. And then the idea is that we discover that the value, the price, is proportional to the number of Bitcoiner squares. And Bitcoiners are like the nodes in a network, all the different places where things happen, right? Because networks are made of nodes. Like they can be computers, can be human beings, if it is a social network. And the Metcalfe says the value of a network is proportional to the number of links. And the number of links, all these connections between the people, is the square of the nodes.
Yeah.
So if you take the square of t to the cube, because this is how the network is growing, you get t to the 6. That is what we observe here, the power law in time. You see how beautiful this is? I don't know if you have any interest in math or interest in science or logic, you see something like this, it should be really convincing, right? That there is something going on here.
Yeah.
Then,
I hope that many people listening here actually are deep in math and in technical stuff. So I think it is interesting. I mean, and for me, this clearly shows the linkages between, like, the time, the addresses, the price, and all these values are related with each other. So
yeah.
I think.
And then, the machines, they are related with the hash rate and
Yep.
the value, square. And also, I mentioned the power law. I mentioned the Morse law because, again, for the technological people, they understand what the Morse law is. And if you go back to my article, I make an argument why, because we were explaining where the bubbles come from, etc.
Yeah.
So this actually could be the connection because in my article, explain how, in a certain sense, because of this relationship, so I actually take it back. You were telling me, is there a connection with the bubble? Yes, because if we didn't have a halving every 4 years, the Moore's law will take over, will make more and more efficient the machines. And it turns out you can do what is called a back of envelope calculation. We can do a better simulation, in the future, etc., and simulate all these. But it turns out that the halving takes care of the Moore's because, it's something that goes like every 4 years, we get basically an improvement of 4 because of the Moore's law. Then you cut it by a factor of 2 because of the halving. But then, sorry, first of all, you cut it by a factor of 2 because of this relationship between hash rate and value with the square. And then you cut it by another factor of 2 because of the halving. And what happens by doing that is basically you keep a balance. Basically the miners don't get punished, neither they get an advantage due to the Moore's law. And so it keeps everything in equilibrium. But it's again amazing. And I don't know, did Satoshi thought about that? Or, the system simply adapted to that, and we started to find like an equilibrium and a balance. I don't know. But it's really interesting that actually the Moore's law plays a role in all these, and it creates some kind of a balance in terms of reducing the impact of the Moore's law, because otherwise the system will get out of balance if you add more and more efficiency in mining. And so when you put it all together and you look at all this is why I understand it's a theory. It's a really beautiful theory about Bitcoin, how it grows, that has all this scale invariant behavior, that it grows proportionally, that it can deal with stress, that is absorbing both good things, doesn't go too far away from the balance, and also bad things. And it continues this growth, this very predictable, consistent, sustainable growth. So I think it's the most beautiful theory. It's the most true because, who else? Tell me anybody else that brings all these things together in a very complete and consistent theory. I don't know of anybody, because S2F kind of tried to explain things, but it's not true, first of all, because the evidence shows that issuance doesn't have an impact. I kind of a little bit show you how issuance is so small in comparison with, but there are many other arguments. And even that doesn't have an entire picture of adoption, why adoption is growing in a certain way, like a power law. And actually, I have evidence also for that because I was able to find in the literature, there are papers that actually studied social networks, and they make a big deal, and they can show you the paper if I found it, but they make a big deal of saying that actually all the social networks that they studied, this was a Chinese paper, this slide here, where we studied several social networks. Because they were Chinese, we focus on Chinese one like WeChat and Weibo. People will think, why Enron? Enron was a scam, etc. What they did, we look at the emails because it was early. So they tried to look at something different from internet. They look at, being bankrupt, they could access all the data and download all the data. So they look at the emails as an example of communication between people and creating a network. And actually, it's a good example because at a certain point, notice what happened, it crashes, right? So it's an example of when the power law is broken, like in the case of Enron, that could happen, right? If you have some kind of disastrous situation, a bankruptcy, etc., then the power law gets broken, because that is another question that people all the time ask, how could it get broken? Many times we think broken upwards, like it goes crazy upwards. In this case, was broken downwards. So be careful what you're wishing for, right? You can also break down.
Exactly. I mean, pretty often, it's too good to be true. So exponentials are too good to be true, basically, right? So it's good.
And actually, we have a lot of bad characteristics. They are very unstable and so on. So in this case, you see these curves because this is log linear, right? We took the log, and so we have n, that is the number of nodes. In our case, that will be the addresses, and then we have the number of connections. They use E because a technical name for these links is edges, the edges of a network. And so you see how you have always and so you recognize this curve. This is exactly the power law curves that we see when you have a log linear chart, right? I wish they did it log, but it's power laws, are all power laws. So the growth of the addresses is a power law, the nodes for us, the growth. And they made a big deal. They say, look, we look at all these networks and people say it should follow S-curves. We don't see any S-curves. Which S-curve are you talking about? Networks don't grow as S-curve. They work as power laws, both the nodes and the links. And in our case, the links is the price because, Metcalfe law says the price is proportional to the links, So with Bitcoin, you have exactly the same thing. You have the nodes, the addresses grow as a power law, and the price grows like a power law. That is basically the links. The links is the price. They are proportional to each other. And you have all these examples of all these power laws, these beautiful power laws. And here, for example, they show basically this will be the equivalent. We did it in this case. We did it in a log graph, and we show the relationship between the links and the nodes. So it is basically the same thing like Metcalfe law, right? It's the equivalent of a Metcalfe law. And it's not always 2. In this case, is 1.41. This one is very close to Bitcoin. Look at this, 1.74. That is kind of like what we got. And then this one a little bit slower. So, this is showing how real networks work. That is basically nodes that grow like a power law and links that grow like a power law too. And the two are related. This is called the densification. The relationship between nodes and links is called the densification. In our case, it's 1.7, so very close to the Metcalfe law. So it's beautiful. It gives us a different understanding of how Bitcoin works, and it gives you like a framework that nobody else has. And in terms of the practical things, right? And maybe we can stop here. You can use the power law to come up with things like this, right? You have like a metric like this, and there are many I discovered. So if you come at my X or watch my videos, I even have, and if you don't mind, we can put a link to that for the people that are interested. I have a Discord group. I have indicators that people can use in TradingView. But we created all these indicators for the people that want to do different things. They want to do DCA because you can say, maybe I want, I don't want to sell my Bitcoin, but as I buy more and more Bitcoin, I want to do it in a clever way. I want to understand how Bitcoin works. I want to understand the cycles. And you could do it in a way where, basically when you are in this, so how do we create this? We created, by the way, another explorer, this Midson with, but I did the same thing, where basically you take the power law, you look at deviations. When we see this decay, you correct for the decay. Now you have a metric that tells you how far you are from the support line. The support line will be 0 and 100 will be very, very far away. And you can say, look, every time I am too far away, I want to lock some of my gains. Maybe I sell 10% of my Bitcoin. And as I go down, I'm going to rebuy. And you can multiply your Bitcoin. Or if you don't like the idea of selling your Bitcoin, you could do DCA. And you could say, well, when I am close to 0, I'm going to do 100% Bitcoin. I'm going to save every month, $1,000, $100, whatever you can afford. And I'm going to buy Bitcoin. And I'm going to buy all Bitcoin if I am in the green area. As I go 10% up, maybe I'm going to do 90% Bitcoin, 10% I put it aside in USDT. And I continue to do that because if you go here, by the time you go here, you still put money aside, but you don't buy. You don't want to buy the top, right? You want to avoid to buy the top. And as you go back, you can do the other way around. You say, I'm going to buy a little bit of Bitcoin, mostly I keep in cash. And as you go back, you start to buy more and more Bitcoin. And in that way, even if you don't sell your Bitcoin, you can do it in a very clever way where you can multiply your Bitcoin in this way because you optimize DCA. So there are many different applications of a power law that I would like to invite people, maybe you want to try our Discord group because we discuss all these kind of things. You can come to my X where we explore this topic. So I would invite you to go deeper. Don't dismiss this because a lot of people dismiss it because they don't understand. It's like Bitcoin, like being orange peel requires a certain amount of study and understanding. And now you're now studying something else. You are going deeper into Bitcoin because if Bitcoin really behaves in this way, you are studying more Bitcoin. You're going to inside a even deeper rabbit hole and learning even more about Bitcoin. And then you can use that knowledge to do different things that help you to get even more Bitcoin, So it's explore because knowledge, my Italian physicist, inspiration that is Enrico Fermi, he was a Nobel Prize for Physics. He had a saying that says, knowledge is always better than ignorance, And so get knowledgeable, get to know Bitcoin.
Definitely. And I think people received a lot of knowledge today from you. That was a very comprehensive education, and I think I will see if it's better to put it like all together or just split it into 3 lessons or whatever.
Maybe.
It was very, very educative. So thank you so much, Giovanni.
Oh, my pleasure.
I also so we can definitely link your X, Beat Poseidon, and other sources. I also watch your updates on the how is it, Quantonomy?
Quantonomy.
Yeah, I think it's a good updates there as well.
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel where we do updates on basically every week. I also have on Thursday. I talk about the book scale. So we are actually going to look at, small little chapters or little sections. And so people can come to my YouTube and look at the videos there. So explore this topic, learn more about Bitcoin, because if a power law is really what Bitcoin follows, then it's part of his identity. It's almost like it's DNA. It's a very important property of Bitcoin. So you should get familiar with it. It's much more than a simple model. It's like an entire way of understanding Bitcoin that gives you a lot of insights, you know.
And I would also encourage people to ask questions under these videos, like use comment sections. And if there are questions, possibly I could, gather them, and maybe we could reconnect sometime in the future to
Yeah,
cover
and cover
things.
the questions. Yeah, we
Yeah,
can do
yeah,
a
yeah.
question and answer. Maybe even live. I mean, we can do it live, and I don't know if people want to interact with us, etc. We could do that.
Yeah, that would be great. So I think we could probably talk for like the next hours.
No, I know.
But I want to respect your time, and I would love to do a follow-up one day, maybe
Yeah,
once we are closer, like to the
to the
start of the bull
top,
market or to
etc.
the
We can
top. Yeah, we
analyze
can
and
analyze
see, what
stuff
is. Yeah.
for sure.
Uh, we, we we have all this liquidity stuff that we didn't cover because I did also some exploration about
Yeah, yeah,
the
I've seen
interplay.
that. Like I've
But we
seen
can do
you.
that another time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe. I've seen you analyzing the global liquidity, and you're saying we are not there yet with the global liquidity, right? Because for the bull market, I've been looking historically, so
right.
there is a lot
Exactly.
of things to cover. So that was super educative, super helpful. My guest today, Giovanni Santostasi, Bitcoin power law expert, as you've heard, like a lot of knowledge. So have a look on the links under the video and study more and ask questions. I'm sure we can answer them this or other way. So thanks, Giovanni, for all
Thank
this
you.
help
Thank you,
here.
everybody, to listen and be patient. Thank you
Thank you.
so much. Bye.
Bye.